So, Shepard Fairey, Eddie Donaldson, thank you for being here. Talk to me. So, Shepard, people are very excited here in Louisville. You've come to do a mural project, a very large mural project on the west side of town. So, tell us a little bit about that project. Give us the brief description of what that project is.
Well, it's a 7-story portrait of Muhammad Ali, which also incorporates a lot of text based around his philosophy and his role as a messenger of peace for the United Nations. I am a big fan of Muhammad Ali for his athleticism, but equally so for his activism and his philanthropy, his outspokenness about issues I care about. So I think to have this mural on the YMCA where he actually trained as a kid and in the city where he grew up it's a really amazing opportunity. And my hope is just that it projects the kind of principles he had and the values I'd like to see manifested, and and it gives some symbolic power to what's going on in the neighborhood as well.
So where's the birth of this idea? Was it a thing you wanted to do? Eddie Donaldson, who's here with us, I believe you've gotten to know outside of Louisville, but he's originally from Louisville. Where does the idea come from, and the spark of it?
Well, Eddie's been going back to Louisville, and it was Eddie's idea. Eddie is friends with Dustin Bingham, Howard Bingham's son, and Howard Bingham shot over 1 million images of Muhammad Ali. He has got an amazing library. So it was the brainchild of Eddie trying to do what we've both been doing for a while, which is bring art to people where they live their lives, public art. For both of us, there's a graffiti street art background, streetwear, street culture, but then also, what can art do for shifting people's perspectives? And Eddie works with Artists for Trauma, and I think we're really philosophically aligned. So when Eddie brought me the project, and I knew I would have access to reference imagery from Howard Bingham through his son Dustin, it was just an amazing opportunity that I really wanted to do. So that's then you start figuring out the logistics.
Well, Eddie, let me ask you, was there anybody, was Shepard your first and only choice here, I'm guessing?
Shepard is always my first and only choice. We've been together, and we've been doing this together and separately for almost 30 years. So he's the best of the best when it comes to this type of activation. And she was definitely first on our list.
Well, Shepard, you talk about the Ali and all those things. Like, was he a big influence? Was his life and his work a big influence to you as you were developing your career as an artist?
It's interesting because, of course, I knew about him as somebody who was an amazing athlete and showman when I was a kid. But then I remember in high school learning about the Vietnam War, not just from the nationalistic view of it, but looking at dissent against the Vietnam War, and Muhammad Ali, his conscientious objection to the Vietnam War came up, as well as the protest movement. And I started to see how difficult it can be to stand up against the American machine. And then I realized a lot more about his efforts to push civil rights forward, to really embrace a lot of the philosophies that were to uplift vulnerable people. And all of that, of course, is incredibly inspiring, because I became a street artist based on my favorite musicians, people from hip hop, punk rock, reggae, Bob Marley, Chuck D, Joe Strummer, who they used their platform to do more than just entertain. And so I saw Muhammad Ali as an amazing example of that same approach. And I've done a couple of other Muhammad Ali portraits, but this one is the one that really touches on his principles, so his philosophy, and I think presents him as someone who's a public citizen, a dignified spokesperson for a lot of ideas that is a lot more than people really give credit to most athletes, but maybe even Ali for. I want to make sure that the extra power and effort and courage that he had is front and center.
Well, and here in Louisville, there have been some local artists who've done much smaller scale murals of Ali, and there's a little bit of history of them being defaced. You're doing it on a scale where I don't think that's possible. And so that's kind of cool. This is going to be 7 stories tall. How long does it take to complete a project like this?
Well, luckily, I work with a team of really great assistants. There'll be 3 of us working for a couple of days, and then 4 of us working for a couple of days. But we imagine it's going to take about 4 days to do it. And it is labor intensive work, but the way it's executed is like a giant stencil. Basically, I'm putting up sheets of paper that have the illustration and design that I've already created at scale. They're lightly spray glued to the wall. The stencil's cut on the wall, sprayed. So it's a lot of physical effort to do it, but the artistry really is more in the creation of the illustration and working out the design. It's just hard blue collar work once we're there, and it does require a certain skill set. But my team and I have done over 120 murals. Mm-hmm. So we know that as long as we're not up against extreme wind or rain, that we can do what we need to do.
Well, so what you're saying is 4 days, but there's this ton of prep work. You've been working on this project for weeks or months, or like how long before you actually come to the site?
Oh, I started working on this back in December. So it's been a few months, and when there's something this large scale, you want to have community involvement. The YMCA, of course, is involved, the Young Black Achievers, the mayor's office, the Ali, Lonnie, Ali's widow. And everyone has stake in it. And I respect that this is more than just something that I can be precious about. I need to share in the process. So Eddie was really great in facilitating a lot of back and forth so that everyone was happy with the end product. And as a problem solver, I like to think that I can present aesthetically and conceptually what I believe in, while taking into consideration what other people think, without compromising the end result. And there was the plus side of being a renegade street artist, where there's no bureaucracy, but I could never do street art that was hit and run without on the scale that this piece is, and it would never have the same impact that this does. So I still believe in the renegade activity and the empowerment of people who feel like they don't have a voice, but doing something that affects a whole neighborhood, a whole, potentially a whole city. I think that I need to be respectful of a lot of different people's opinions.
Right. Well, and that leads me. So as it sounds like you were the one taking all these meetings and doing all the phone calls and all that work. What was the challenge for you in connecting all the dots of the bureaucracies and the community leaders and all the things that you brought to bear in support of this project?
We didn't really have any challenges. Everyone was very upfront about what the issues could possibly be and what we needed to be sensitive to. And Shepard's really easygoing and invites the input. At some points, I was like, "Oh, I can't ask him that." He's like, "Of course I'll do that." So he's very accommodating. So we didn't really have any issues on, besides people moving slower than I do. I don't think I really had any issues at all.
So you just had to be patient probably a few times?
Patience was definitely on the list, but it wasn't that bad. It actually kind of flowed. I mean, Shepard usually nails it in the first try, so we had very few comments and input that were really necessary.
Well, there was a really helpful brief about what some of the YMCA community and Lonnie Ali and the Young Black Achievers were excited about, which happened to align with what I was excited about. So that really was helpful. And I had done a lot of research on Ali's quotes and, you know, and of course the photo reference. And so it, you know, once I started to develop it, I felt like it was going to sync up with what people were looking for. And there were some minor revisions, but it really, in the end, I'm extremely happy with the piece and I can't wait to paint it.
Well, you know, and looking back at your thinking about your career and when you talk about that guerrilla phase, I mean, was it difficult for you to adjust to being the guerrilla artist and then being somebody whose stickers were like everywhere and suddenly, you know, like when you became famous, did that change you as an artist? Was it difficult to adjust to?
Well, this is a complex question in that when I was only doing guerrilla work, I was also in a lot of ways just living very hand to mouth, destitute, and I was tenacious. I was stubborn, but the idea of having no money and bad credit for the rest of my life wasn't really that appealing, even though I wanted to convey what I wanted to convey on my own terms, and I was willing to sacrifice for that. When I started to have a little bit of success, my mentality about using art as a tool of social good and having that underdog spirit remained, but sometimes people's perceptions of me would change. You know, funny enough, when I wasn't having any success, a lot of the people that might have helped support my career considered me a loser, not worth backing. And then when I started to have some success, people said that that I was, you know, only in it for glory and money, and that was a reason not to support me. We can't win, except that I feel like there's enough like-minded people. You can't win with everyone, but there's enough like-minded people out there that doing these projects that I feel are a great conversation starter for important things that need to be discussed. I'm gonna have some people are gonna sling mud, and that's okay. That's a part of the process. And you mentioned before that some of the Muhammad Ali murals have been defaced or vandalized, and you know, I always think that's unfortunate, but you know, in some ways that's part of the nature of a public conversation. Right. And the thing that you learn quickly as a street artist is if you get your feelings hurt easily, you're not going to last.
Well, and I know you start, you know, particularly in the early part of your career, you know, you sort of had an identity that your work was protest art, that you were protesting and pushing for social change. Do you think that that's harder to do when you are suddenly well known, or has it made it easier to put your messages out there?
Well, I think that it's evolved in that I still push back against things that are unjust, but my art isn't purely about being against things. In ways, I've infiltrated the system and been able to find allies and tried to improve the system from within. I use what I call the inside-outside strategy.
Right.
My mentality is still that I feel like if the system doesn't give me an opportunity to say what I want to say in an authentic, pure way, then I will work outside the system. But I will also work within the system when it, is part of a in a sense, a process of changing the system itself, changing the culture of the system, which can lead to actual structural change. So, these are things that I have to navigate carefully and consider on a case-by-case basis. But, Eddie's been working as an outsider for years, but working with the mayor's office on this project, you have to deal with the system, with the structure. And it's great when you can prove to people that work like this is good for the community. It's not going to it's not going to mean that everyone's going to be inspired to tag every building. It's not going to, there's a lot of things that creatively I think get shut down based on fear, but all it takes is one successful project to evolve people's attitudes about what should actually have support. We're all taxpayers, so what do we want the money going to? Things that enrich the community, or things that are based on just purely fear about the safety of property?
Well, and Ali, just to put Ali up, is to speak to justice and questions of justice and injustice in a very complex way. I don't want to get into that too much, but I was thinking the other day, and Eddie, let's come to you first with this question, but you can both maybe answer it as a way of wrapping up our time here. I was watching a play at Actors Theater last week in which the question became, it was protesters from the 60s and 70s, real like the street people from the Black Panthers and the Young Lords and things like that, talking to their children who are they're doing their form of social protest through social media and things like that. And at one point, one of the older people says, you can't do a revolution that way. You can't. And so, so it's an interesting question to me. It's like, in this modern world, do the technologies give the idea of protest and revolution just a different channel, or do they maybe nullify it or make it safe for society? Eddie, what do you think about that?
It's a big question, a lot to unpack there. I'm a fan of social media overall, besides the time that's wasted and some of the senseless acts of violence that people record, right? I mean, we're in the information business at the end of the day. And I think, I'm delighted that my kids have access to the information that they do. Did I just lose you?
No, I'm still here.
Okay, I'm delighted that my kids have the access to the information that they do now. Like me and Shepard used to have to find a friend that identified with something and see a guy on the bus or whatever to kind of know he was like us. And we spotted our kind at the restaurant. Now you can just get on the internet and learn about these things, and you can actually sign up and respond to call to actions. I think social media is a great tool to get people together for the right cause, but also the wrong cause. So I don't necessarily have the right answer for that, but I definitely think social media can be used to rally the troops and actualize change if used the right way.
And Shepard, what's your thought on that?
Well, I agree with that, but I do think that social media is it's one component of what needs to be a wider portfolio for this change. Sorry, there's a phone ringing in here.
That's okay. Well, just
let me just start over that question. I'm gonna. Okay, so I think social media has value for sharing information with people, for rallying people, like Eddie said, but I think it also is just one component within what needs to be a broader portfolio. One of the things that to me is so powerful about public art is that it is physical evidence that someone thought the endeavor was worth a lot of effort. Now, public art is not in and of itself revolutionary, but I think that the visceral side of experiencing the landscape changing and feeling like something can be done, I think that can motivate people to act. And so I think it needs to be a whole range of approaches to change. But if social media encourages people to vote, to participate in a petition, to do any number of things where there is a critical mass that's achieved by people power, that's great. But sometimes I think getting out there in the physical world and doing things is also critical.
Okay. Well, I think we're just about at the end of the time. I know you have a tight schedule, Shepard,
Yeah.
and Eddie, and I imagine, because this isn't probably the only project you're working on, but even this project has probably got you.
Well, I have a couple more.
Yeah,
a couple more interviews later today, but I have a friend from New York that's here for a print signing. We collaborated on a print, and so I have to get to that. But if there's anything else that you think is really important for us to touch upon, I can give you a couple more minutes.
Well, I don't, let me ask you this. I mean, do you think about these projects sometimes? Like, was the appeal of this because Louisville was in a city you had worked in, and you guys can both kind of touch upon this. Eddie's connection to Louisville is part of the reason. But do you look for opportunities to get out of LA and get away from some of the larger metropolitan areas and get into smaller cities where, like, this is a huge deal here, and maybe it would be not quite a huge deal in some cities? I don't know, but like for us, this seems like a real gift, right? Do you look for different kinds of communities?
I do, because I think that a lot of people already think in a similar way to the way I think in Los Angeles and San Francisco and New York City. And I'm from the South. I'm from Charleston, South Carolina, and I've done several mural projects and art show projects in Charleston. And I realize how much people appreciate it when they have access to something that normally doesn't come through town. Now, I'm excited to go anywhere that I think has got great things going on. And just based on what Eddie has talked to me about with Louisville, and the way the art scene is really percolating there, I think that it's going to be really rewarding for me. So it's amazing that you would say that people might consider what I'm doing a gift, but I feel like it's a gift for me to have the opportunity to meet a bunch of great people, hear other perspectives, and do something that allows us all to just talk about what's going on in the city and in the world.
Sure.
Hey,
well, Eddie, please come in.
Shepard's absolutely right. It's for us, I speak for both of us. I think it's a gift for us to be able to come to a market that is so rich in culture and has been for a long time, and bring something different. There's not much, you know what I mean? Like, we're bringing a slice of our life to Louisville. But more importantly to me, I cannot wait for Shepard to touch down in Louisville and see how special the people are here in Louisville. See how special the air is. And there's really a heartbeat here in Louisville in the art scene of people that really care. And I think, I'm excited for him to actually see that and feel that. And then I'm also excited to see how this addition to the city will translate to those people and motivate those people to not give up and not stop, regardless of what's in front of us, whether it's mass shootings or, political differences. We all have one thing that we can surround ourselves around, and that's art. So I'm really looking forward to this exciting event happening here. And I hope everyone makes it out to the art show opening to meet Shepard and, and buy some art, get something signed, or just say hello.
Right. Yeah. Well, listen, guys, I appreciate you being with me so much. This was, however you feel about Shepard, this was also a gift to be able to get this on. I'll tell you, my station manager is so excited when she found out that we might get this interview. So, because she's a big fan. And so we look forward to meeting you guys in person here in a couple of weeks. And thank you so much again for doing this today.
Oh, yeah. My pleasure, Keith. Really good to meet you, and look forward to seeing you in the city.
All right.
See you, Eddie.
See you.
Bye.
Sorry.